All right, welcome back, you lovely people out there, to my small YouTube channel. Denny is with you once again here in the suburbs today, just hanging out. Had to look at some doors for a project coming up. Being self-employed, you have to work Saturdays sometimes, but that's all right. Hope you are doing well, hanging in there. Thanks to all who have watched the last video. And, a couple new subscribers, so I appreciate that. Messy hair again today. Hope you don't mind. These days I just kind of roll out of bed and just do what I need to do. I don't put too much effort in if I'm just doing stuff during the day on a lazier afternoon. I try to groom myself a little better if I'm going out at night, or or if I'm actually doing a proper work day. But anyways, yeah, the hair's growing. You know what's funny is I was at the bar a couple weekends ago, and it was like a friend of a friend, and some girl told me that she's like, oh, my friend couldn't remember your name, but she's just like, can I talk to the guy that looks like a cherub? I got called a cherub. And for a second there, I'm like, I haven't heard that word or that description in a long time, but I know it's a biblical thing, and I think it's like angel children or whatever it is. But yeah, I kind of knew what she was getting at, and then I never really thought of that. I'm like, yeah, I have kind of like the curly cherub look. Kind of silly, but hey, I'll take it as a compliment. Angels are good. I like angels. We all need our guardian angels in this world, so totally fine with that. So I wanted to do this video because I had a bit of a health scare, and I panicked a little bit because of something that was happening to my body at the beginning of this week. So Monday, Tuesday, I started getting, well, actually, I'll tell you right away, and then I'll backtrack. I ended up driving myself to the hospital. Went to the emergency room on Wednesday morning, and spent a few hours there to see a doctor because of something that was going on. And so what happened was I started getting a little bit of a rash under my armpit, and I've had some minor, very off and on, but very rare, maybe I'm talking once or twice a year, a little bit blemish, like on the body, like a little bit of redness, itchy, just kind of minor skin irritation that just goes away after 2 or 3 days. And this kind of happens off and on, and then the skin is fine for 6 months, 9 months, whatever, and then I get maybe another little irritation, tiny spot on the neck, it looks like I have a hickey or something like that. Or this is like probably 80% of the population deals with some sort of minor skin irritation. There's $1 billion industry on just skin relief and anti-itching products out there. So that was going on, and I didn't think anything of it. But then the next day, I noticed it kind of was spreading, and it got worse and worse as the hours went on. And I started getting a bit concerned because Now I was getting it at parts of my body that I've never had issues before. Like the back of my neck was really itchy. And it wasn't that itch where you scratch it and you feel instant relief. It was that itch that when you scratch it, it actually starts burning. And it got very uncomfortable. So I did go to bed that night. I went to the drugstore and I bought this, like, the hydrocortisone cream, the itch relief stuff, and that helped a little bit. But I went to bed that night, and when I woke up the next morning, I was in a full-on panic because the rash had spread all over down the side here, and it was on my back. I had little spots, and then on my lower back I had like a patch that was itchy. And in the growing area, which was the most concerning because I don't want to be scratching there all day. And it was also freaking me out that it was like a hot rash. Like you scratch it and you could feel heat, and the bumps were a little bit raised. And the one thing I did notice though was, like, you know, I tested, they said it could be like an infection or something serious going on, so you should seek medical attention if you have a rash that's spreading or a rash that feels hot. So I thought, oh my God, like, how serious is this? Because I had work lined up that morning and I was kind of excited because, you know, I'm self-employed, and whenever you get gigs that come up that pay pretty good, you want to get to it as soon as possible. So I was chomping at the bit to get going on this work, but I had this rash I was dealing with. So I was contemplating waiting till the end of the day, and I thought, okay, I'll just deal with this rash during the day because it wasn't on my face or on my hands or anything. So as long as I had a shirt, most people probably couldn't even tell. But it was coming up on my neck, and that was not a good look. And, you know, wasn't getting any better. So I said, you know what? I better go to the hospital and get this looked at right away. I was going to go to like the walk-in clinic, just, you know, the Medi centers that are everywhere. But then I thought, well, I'll be waiting in that waiting room, and then the doctor might just send me to the hospital anyways if it is serious. And I did check before. They said it was like what I had was a blanching rash, which typically is not as serious or dire situation, or, you know, it's when you press in on the skin where it's red and then it turns white, which means it's like the, you know, cutting off the blood or whatever, blood supply, and it turns white. So that means it's not that serious. It means that it's something that's underneath the skin that's probably going to clear up eventually. But anyways, I didn't want to take the chance, so I drove myself to the hospital emergency room, the ER, as they said, as they say. And I ended up waiting there. It wasn't super busy, but, you know, ERs, there's always going to be people in there. Aging population here in the West, and health problems, and, you know, here in Canada, you don't have to pay to go to the emergency room. I mean, we pay in other ways. We get taxed all the hell so that these things can exist, but that's another story. So I went there and waited for about 3 hours because it's a triage situation. So, you know, if an older gentleman comes in with chest pains, you know, I'm not going to get in before him with my stupid little rash. So I did wait for a while, and I went in after about 3 hours, and the nurse, who was this very nice woman who was probably like 35 or something, but it was just interesting because she had an Irish accent, and, you know, she was busy. I didn't have a chance to chat and, you know, ask her, you know, how long has she been in Canada and what her story was. But man, was she ever super efficient. She did my vitals and checked my rash, and like took this little scanner thing to, take a scan of it to kind of quickly diagnose it. And she did this so fast and explained to me exactly what it was and what could have triggered it, and what to do as a remedy. So basically turns out, thank God, that it was not anything serious. Oh, I wish I had the piece of paper here that said what type of rash it is, but it's pretty common, and it could be triggered by like literally 100 different things. So her advice was to not even try to figure out what it was, because you'll drive yourself insane. She said it could be exposure to an allergen in the environment. And with me being a locksmith, going to all these different places, it's even harder to track. Probably wasn't something from in my home, because I would have had this happen before. But I was at a job site Monday, and I was working in these washrooms, and it was like an older building, like probably an 80-year-old building, and the washrooms weren't in great condition. I don't know when anything was renoed or what could have been going on. In commercial and industrial buildings, it's different than a house. There's more that could be going on in terms of pollutants and toxins, and there's usually more mold in like industrial or commercial buildings than there would be in a house or apartment. So I'm thinking maybe there was some sort of mold or something in these washrooms that I had worked on. I was there for like 4 hours, and I was sweating, and maybe I was a bit overworked. She said that stress and maybe lack of sleep combined with sweating and maybe a certain type of clothing can trigger something like this. And then, it started out as small, and then like me not even realizing or being kind of stupid is I took a couple of hot baths or hot showers afterwards, like that night and then the next night. And they said that's bad for this type of rash, and that can cause it to get worse. So that didn't help. And who knows if I had a further reaction to the anti-itch cream that I put, and maybe that. And then when I slept that night, you get hot in certain areas, maybe a bit sweaty, and then it grew like a fungus or a rash. But you kind of, when these scares happen, you have to go get it checked out. And it's weird how you just know, like in your head, where you make that decision, whether it's like, okay, this is something I can deal with, this isn't that bad, or when it's something that like pushes you to like, okay, I'm definitely going to seek medical attention. And I'm bad for like, I don't want to be one of these people, like every single little ailment or thing that happens when you're not feeling well, you just go to the doctor for every stupid fuck thing that happens. Because now, you're getting older. Of course, you're not going to feel great all the time. Things are going to happen. You're going to catch little infections and you're going to get sick and all that. And, these people that just take up resources for stupid things, in these walk-in clinics where they have the sniffles, and they got to take up the doctor's time and everything when there's more serious stuff that people need for help. And that got me thinking, and maybe even worrying. And I know we shouldn't worry or stress, is stuff we can't control, but just aging, like if you follow the channel, I'm not that old, but I'm not that young. And, these things pop in your head, like all these age-related diseases that can come up, or problems. You know, I don't even know if this rash thing is just something that is aided with hormonal changes, or just getting older and not having the same type of immune system. You know, these immune issues when you're older, you know, you don't have the same recovery as you did when you were younger. So possibly need to be stricter with lifestyle protocol and diet. And you know, I'm not that bad, but I'm not that great. You know, I could be doing better, and you know, maybe one too many fast food meals a week. You know, I'm probably eat like 2 or 3 of them. Maybe I should cut down to 1. Or, you know, I'm guilty of not drinking enough water. You know, I have been guilty of that. You know, you get caught up in work and on a certain job, you know, you even forget that you're thirsty, and then, you know, you're dehydrated at the end of the day, and you don't drink enough water. And they say that can be a cause for a lot of things that can be triggered by that. You know, you're not hydrated. That means your organs aren't working to their capacity, doing their job. And you know, it's always these things you forget to do. So yeah, just thinking about that. It's an elderly, just as I'm talking about old people and stuff, elderly couple just walked past, probably in their 80s. I don't know if you see them through the not, they're on the other side, can't see them. But man, yeah, I think about getting old all the time. And you know, some of you know my mother is diabetic, and she has her health issues, and it's just not fun. And when I was waiting in that emergency in the ER, you know, I could see all these old people coming in, and just kind of sad and depressing. You know, you had the guy that had I don't know what you call it, the bag that you have to piss in because you know, you don't have bladder control anymore. So he had this bag, you know, taped to his leg and whatever. It's just like, oh. And you just know that it's, you know, if you're old and unhealthy, like, you know, in your 70s or 80s, and you have these issues, you're making these hospital visits fairly often, and almost probably becomes routine. And that kind of worries me. You know, I don't like going to the hospital. I'm sure nobody does. And to think that that can be, you know, even a monthly occurrence or a monthly visit, that's pretty sad. And that in some ways, you know, you kind of get bummed out and depressed about it. But then in other ways, I deal with it as like motivation, and to get maybe inspired to live a little bit healthier. And even just being aware of these things, just the kind of the wake-up call that, you know, you're not invincible and things can happen, and you just expect the unexpected. You never know when something's going to happen where you have to go to the hospital. And, you know, thank the Lord, it was a situation where I could take myself there and didn't have to call an ambulance or rely on somebody else to get me there, which isn't always the case. You know, saw a guy in there in the ER at the same time, just got brought in there by his buddy, and I guess he fell down from a ladder or something on a job site. Just excruciating pain, probably broken ribs, or maybe broke something in his back. I don't know what it was, but they had to get a wheelchair for him. And just sitting there and watching all this stuff happen, you know, when you're just out about in public, you don't see, you know, sick people or people with problems, but, you know, you get a lot of perspective sitting in the ER for a few hours, all the different things that can happen, all the different types of people and the conditions they're dealing with, and maybe just the random bad luck shit that happens that could be life-changing. And you know, you also start expressing gratitude and just thankful that we have these medical professionals and doctors out here doing these things to, you know, save lives and help people get better, or at least figure out what's happening with them. You know, I would have, even with Google and all this stuff, I probably wouldn't know what exactly my condition was. But with the right treatment and or the right, you know, eyes on the situation and the specialized equipment and knowledge that medical staff have, it's that peace of mind. And that was, a lot of it was peace of mind. You know, I don't think I was worried about any imminent danger I was in, because I didn't have the accompanying, the stuff that can go along with rashes, like the heavy symptoms like chest pains or breathing or flu-like symptoms, which can indicate something a lot more serious. You know, cognitively I was fine, and physically I could move around just fine. And you know, there was no pus or, you know, signs of infection. So, you know, I was like probably 50% sure I was going to be fine, but it's that other 50% that I don't know if this was something that was starting that was going to get worse. And just that peace of mind of seeking help is great. And, you know, as many problems as we do have in the West here in the States and in Canada, the fact we have, you know, first world resources for medicine is something to be thankful for, even though the service isn't always great. I mean, I did have to wait 3 hours, and that's annoying, but I mean, for a skin outbreak, 3 hours is actually pretty good, you know. So I was pretty impressed. And I did go to a hospital that was not in the city proper. It was a little bit outside, a little bit quieter. And I did that on purpose because I didn't want to be in an ER where it's way more chaotic, where you have like drug overdoses and, you know, people coming in with stab wounds and shit like that. You know, I've heard some stories about, you know, places like Chicago or New York where the ER is like just 24 hours of just nightmare, you know, people coming in with, it's just way too much to handle. I went to a quiet, it's a smaller city just outside of where I live. Like, it's like a 20-minute drive, and it's more of a conservative area with a lot of older people, and it's more upscale, more what do you call it? It's more upper middle class, or middle upper class, or whatever you want to call it. So you're not going to get a lot of drug overdose and stuff like that. It was mostly like older people that weren't feeling well that were in the ER, and there's a couple of young people in there too that maybe were just had an injury or something like that. But yeah, overall pleasant experience given the circumstances. You know, I avoid all hospitals if possible, but you know, so that was kind of a wake-up call. I think the last time I actually went to an ER was like 22 years ago, when I had a really bad flu, when I was basically like passing out and had a dangerously high fever. And so yeah, I had to go just in case I had pneumonia or some sort of chest thing that could kill me or something like that. But and they took care of me that day too. I was pretty young, you know, I was like 21 or 22 when that happened. The only other time was like when I was playing hockey and I got a puck in the face, and I actually like split my chin here. I had like blood gushing out and I had to get stitches. Those are the only 2 times in like the last 20 years up until this week. So yeah, another reminder that we're getting older, and you know, these age-related things can happen, and you know, we're more vulnerable when we're older because it takes us longer to recover from injury and illness. And yeah, I just wanted to make this video to remind everybody, you know, I know a lot of you are my age or even older, to really take care of yourself and just be thankful for, you know, every healthy day you have above ground, every day you're feeling good. You know, just be thankful and take care of yourself. And, you know, I'm guilty of, you know, being sad about it and sometimes angry that, you know, this has to happen. And I feel for my mother, and my father is also getting older and he's dealing with things like more knee and joint pain. And yeah, it just sucks, you know. And you get caught up in work and other bullshit in life and don't think about health. And it takes something like an incident like mine to remind you that health is the most important thing. If we don't have that, then everything else gets put to the back seat. Like I said, I had work to do, but that got pushed aside, of course, for health. And I'm not going out this weekend to meet friends because of health. I'm still on these antihistamine drugs, and you know, you can't drink, and the doctor told me to relax if possible until the rash fully heals. It's about, you know, it's almost gone, but still a little bit there, and I want to make sure I get that taken care of and live healthy this weekend. Get my sleep, get away from the alcohol and the you know, sometimes you eat shitty food after you come home from the bar, and that's not good. And all these things, they feed like these diseases and these rashes and these inflammatory things that happen. You know, inflammation when you're younger, it's easier to deal with. You just don't get it. Your body just kind of works through it, and it doesn't happen really. You know, you just get away with basically murdering your own self, and you can deal with it easily. You can get shit-faced hammered, eat pizza, and wake up the next day and go to work at 7 a.m. Those days are done, unfortunately, for me and for most of you watching, judging by the demographics. If you're in your 20s and you're watching this, well, it's not going to last forever. It's going to end sooner than you might even know. So yeah, enjoy yourself, get drunk, do whatever, but know that that day will come to an end, unless you want to live a life of ER hospital visits, or feeling like shit every day, or being put underground. It's up to you. So warning to you youngsters out there. And yeah, all you elderly people, I hope you're getting the care and the treatment that you need. And I hope you're doing relatively well. And feel free to share in the comments what you do to stay healthy in older age, and what advice you have for me or for anybody watching. Yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments. Share your story, ask me a question. I accept super thanks, so you could do that. I also have a PayPal donation link in the channel description. And thanks again all for subscribing, and hope that things carry on a nice trajectory for us all, and just pray for a better place. Pray for the world to be a better place, to move in that direction and not work in the opposite direction. Try to stay optimistic, but also skeptical. And yeah, just look after yourself. That's all I can really say. A lot of resources there that can help you. And yeah, just confide in your friends and family to get through. Anyways, enough rambling. Once again, as always, God bless you. Peace be with you. Denny will see you on the next video. Have a good one. Happy Sunday. Bye.